multiplicity. Okay. So now we take the letter Vav. We said means connection. Yeah. Now let's learn one other letter and we'll put a concept together. The letter Tuf. That's the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And if we imagine that Aleph is the most spiritual, then which is the most material? Which is the most physical, would you say? Obviously, the last one. And the Hebrew word Tuf is used in the Tanakh, in the 24 books of Tanakh, in book of Yechezkel, to describe a mark, like an icon, a material impression. Like, for example, if you see an apple, right, there's an icon for Apple computers. So you look at it and it wakes up the picture of Apple computers and a company in your mind. You see those golden arches, right? You know what I'm talking about? And right away you think of, oh, McDonald's. Whereas one of my teachers said the empty luchos, the empty tablets. You know, that's the symbol of American culture. So now so it means a physical representation of something. So if we have a spiritual idea that's connected intimately with a physical representation, that would be the letters Aleph, Vav, Tuf. Does anybody know what Hebrew word that would spell Aleph, Vav, Tuf? And what would be called an Aleph, Vav, Tuf? I'll give you a couple of examples. One is going to be a little bit delicate to speak about it, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. Shabbos is called an os. How about that? Os. A rainbow is called an os. Os, Aleph, Vav, Tuf. A tefillin, those black boxes that we take our blood pressure with, every morning, that's called an os. And bris milah is also called an os. Now, if we study each one of those situations, so what is it? What is tefillin? Tefillin are made out of, I was surprised, my little granddaughters had no idea what they're made out of. They see their father has them and they know he puts them on. Plastic? No. What's it made out of? Anybody? Animal hide. What's that?
Leather, right? They're like
leather.
Yeah.
It's a dead cow. It's a dead cow. And yet when I put my tefillin on and I put them back every morning, I give a kiss. Imagine pulling over to the side of the road and there's some roadkill over there and I give it a kiss. Is there something wrong with me? But if you take a spiritual and you take those tefillin and you employ the 30,000 details that go into the construction of the tefillin, and you take those that animal hide and you cure it and you work it that way, suddenly it becomes a spiritual manifestation of a physical manifestation of a spiritual idea that's becoming intimate with it. And that's called an os. And the same thing, Shabbos is called an os. When I think about Shabbos, I don't know about anybody else, I think about kugel and cholent and 7-layer cake and chicken soup and raisin challahs and grape juice and all those good things. It's not a day of fasting and sitting on a mountain. It's a day where a lot of spiritual ideas are being embedded into and laced into the physical world. That's an os. Bris milah, the circumcision, the male anatomy, it may seem like it's physical, but it's a spiritual connector between that relates generation to generation from Abraham until Mashiach comes. That's how the Jewish people are built, through this spiritual engagement. So it may look like it's a physical thing and it's the most animalistic thing, but it's really the most spiritual dimension as well. And a rainbow too. A rainbow. Imagine a teacher says, when I'm upset at the class, I'm going to put like a little colorful mark on the board, and it's just my way of telling you, I think everybody should be suspended, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to have mercy on you. And that's really what the rainbow is all about also. It's a sign. It may look beautiful and enchanting, but at the same time, it's a sign. So the premise over here is, if we take the Hebrew alphabet, we can understand what the physical world is all about. And we're also learning that the physical world is really not, we speak about physicality and spirituality in practical terms, but the truth is that the world is not either physical or spiritual. We experience it that way, it's the whole world is really, if it had to, it's really one. And which one would you say? Anybody? Now we're going to put on your mystical seatbelts over here. The world is really spiritual because everything is a manifestation of God and God's plan. And the Almighty has no physicality and no corporality, has no materialism about him. Crazy. But the Zohar says that Hashem contracted himself and restricted himself. If we would take, for example, sunlight, let's say I would tell you that I have sunshine on my feet. What would you think? I feel like dancing. I'm telling you something. I have David, I have sunshine on my feet. What do you think about that? Huh? I'm not just being poetic. I really have sunshine on my feet. And you know how?
I think you're lying because you're indoors. But no, how?
Look, give me a chance to explain. So sunshine on my feet means the sun is blazing down on the earth from 93 million miles away. And there's little solar panels out in an open field that it's called grass. And through the processes of photosynthesis, they're retaining chlorophyll. Along comes Elsie the cow, munch, munch, munch. And she eats it up. She makes milk for my kids, Honey Nut Cheerios on Shabbos. The rest of her ends up going to is left over for cholent, and she doesn't know how she's doing it, but she's manufacturing all of this stuff. And then they just don't want to throw her out after that, because there's other parts that cannot be eaten. So they send her to the Echo Shoe Factory, and I'm wearing genuine cow hide leather on my feet. So what is it? It's sublimated sunshine. That's what it is. It's been contracted and contracted to the point where it's not recognizable as sunshine. A diamond is really a drop of sunlight that it was a dark piece of coal that came from living material, C6H12O6, that got compressed to the point where it's a dense piece of light. So the world is really a dense piece of spirituality. And we can prove the oneness of the world from the periodic table very, very simply. I used to learn with a fellow who built light water nuclear power plants. And I had a chance to speak with a few of his designers and the high-minded physicists. And the question I asked him is everything in this world fissionable? If we split an uranium atom, it comes out, we found out in the 20th century, the latter part of the 20th century, oceans of sublime energy. It's almost immeasurable how much is packed into. I know my wife went to Israel for a couple of weeks, and when she packed her suitcase, we had to sit on it and then when you open it up, it probably jumped up. But when you split open an atom, it is like, we can't even imagine how much energy has been invested and how much has been packed into those small little seemingly non-living particles. Yeah. And the light that comes from the sun is coming from the fusion of hydrogen, which is the lightest on the periodic table. And the only reason why uranium is so precious is because it's large enough to be fissionable. It's a big enough target. Everything else is going to be too small. But if you split open anything, it's going to come out oceans of sublime energy, and it's all the same stuff. Everything that's on this periodic table is all the same stuff, just with different densities in the nucleus, and different amount of protons and electrons spinning at various valences. But inside, it's the same sublime energy. It's all the same stuff. How about that? So behind all these letters and behind all this physical world is really a spiritual source. We're going to get to our point over here in a minute. And one of the things that Rabbi Akiva's student, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, sort of revealed and made available for the world to understand is, we may look like we're separate. We may look like we're different people. You have your phone and I have my phone, and you have your bank account and I have my bank account, and you live in your apartment and I live in my house, and everybody lives someplace differently. But somewhere in a deep, deep place, we are all connected. We have the same server. Let's say we're using the same phone. So I have my buttons and I have the certain apps that I use, and you have different contacts and apps that you use, but we're connected to the same server. And if it wouldn't be that we're connected to the same server, then we wouldn't be able to communicate with each other. So we're all hooked up to the same satellite. And so Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai took the idea of Torah scholarship away from the idea of it's just about academia, who is smarter, who's going to the Harvard of yeshivas, who's memorized more information, who's quicker in the mind, who's more agile in Talmudics, and brought it into a realization that there's something powerful that's happening over here, that the world is really a very giant spiritual universe. And what we do is we in this world, we take physicality and we turn it into spirituality. That's what we're doing on Shabbat. That's what we're doing when we're eating and we're making blessings and these type of things. We're taking the physical and we're delivering it back to Hashem for the spiritual. Interesting. And what the Almighty is doing is even more miraculous. He's taking the spiritual, the ultimate spiritual, and he's turning it into physicality. The Hebrew word for table. Anybody know? Table?
Shulchan.
Shulchan, beautiful. What is a shulchan? The Hebrew word tells you what the real purpose of something is. Shulchan. What is a shulchan? It means a table. But there's another word that's in there. Shulchan. It doesn't mean a flat object with some kind of support underneath to keep it, steady so it doesn't tip over. There's a Hebrew word in there, shalach, which means, anybody? Shalach means to send. So what is a table? What is the purpose of a table? A table is like a mailbox, even an email mailbox or a physical mailbox. That's the place where Hashem sends us gifts. I sit at the Shabbos table, beautiful challahs, beautiful fruit, beautiful family. And we take that physicality and we sing songs and we praise Hashem. We're taking the physicality and we're turning it back into spirituality. We're turning it into spirituality, and Hashem delivers back to us in physical terms. That's shalech. It's an interface between the spiritual and the material, and the material and the spiritual. And so maybe we can get a little bit of a flavor over here. What's the deal with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the fire? Yeah, okay, maybe we can get it. We go to a bonfire on Lag Bomer. People are gathering around. I was up in Marone a couple of years ago, and it was quite an amazing scene to see so many tens and tens of thousands of people. And the big event was everybody gathering around, and they lit this fire with logs, Lag Bomer, and we danced around for hours. And the truth is, it was a physical representation of us, of our lives. We may look like we're just like flesh and blood, but we just explained it before. Inside every one of us and every particle of us is a sublime fire. A physical fire is something small compared to the energy and the depth that's inside even the smallest particle, the smallest atom and molecule. And so what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is, he revealed the true depth. You're looking at a piece of wood and it looks like it's asleep, like it's useless, but there's fire inside of it. There's depth, there's profundity in it. And we look at another person, we say, yeah, I know him and I know her, and, it's brown hair and blue eyes, and we think we understand it. It's a fire inside. We're a fire. Everybody's a fire, a deep fire, a profound fire, an infinite fire. We have infinity within us, and there's infinity in everything. And part of the mission that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai opened up was, it's not about learning in Talmudics and academics as much as it's about discovering the deep fire of the universe, discovering Hashem in the Almighty that's embedded in every molecule and every jot and tittle of creation. That's really what it's all about. Pardon me if I get excited over here, because this is what to be excited about. That's the fire. Sometimes when I start to talk about things that have to do with deep truth, the fire wakes up inside of me. My wife will tell me, okay, calm down, Abba, calm down. You don't want to scare people away, but it's exciting. It's a fire. A fire wakes up inside. That's why Jews shuckle. Did you ever notice that? You know what that is? Did you ever see Jews start to move like that sometimes? That's when the soul is stimulated. The Zohar says, just like it's like a candle that wants to go back to the sun. And even though the candle knows that when it goes back to its source, everything wants to go back to its source, like water wants to go to the ocean. It'll keep on searching until it finds its way to the ocean. The fiery soul inside of a Jew wants to go back to the sun. And even though it knows when it gets into the sun, it's going to be lost in the enormity of the sun. It's going to be nullified. But even still, he wants to go back. Our soul wants to go back and connect with God. That's what's going on. And therefore, the soul of the Jew begins to shuckle without even realizing it. It's very hard to stop sometimes when the soul begins to feel that feeling of stimulation that goes on inside. So maybe that's a little bit of a flavor of what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was delivering to the world. And it wakes up an awareness within us that we're not just living, it's tradition. It's a nice Jewish tradition. It's something that's as deep and as old and as profound as anything you could possibly even ever imagine. So that's what it's all about. And that gives it a little bit more reason why it's more valuable to hold on to. Not something to be disregarded because something else looks more interesting and inviting. This is the depth of the universe. This is the purpose of life. And understanding that, I do believe, creates how do we say it? Rabbi Akiva was successful with his students because not just important to know what to do, but to know why we're doing what we're doing. So if anybody have any question, maybe we'll just press the pause button over here. I know we brought up a lot of subjects, a lot of new ideas probably. Questions, anything, please. Football, politics, you name it. Chemistry.